What is up, Rift of Nations? Technically, this is episode 36 because 35 was the last one, but it's not the last one. You can't end a campaign on the combat that ends and then the character dies and then what? Right? Credits start rolling. No, 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 no. So, this is the wrap up, what we did and how I ran it off from like a real life standpoint. I'll talk about all the meta stuff first, and then we'll get into what actually happened. It's just kind of how I ran this end of the session. It was the last weekend before the birth of my second son, who's now born at this point now. That's why I didn't film the wrap up. We had a session. It was the end of the wrap up thing. I just let it be what it is. I wanted to simmer in that moment. I didn't want to come film a thing for it. I just wanted to like sit with the end of that campaign and what it was and what it meant to me and everything in a sappy way. But now things have settled down a little bit. God, I still have a 6-day-old over there, but I wanted to give you guys the closure of the big ending picture here of the final, like what happened at the end here. So at a meta standpoint, everyone knew that we were going to come over and there's probably going to be, half an hour of just wrap up of like, where is your character going? And I told them to prepare me what you think that your character would do in their final days off into the sunset. You can be as broad as specific as you want. You can talk about specific things that happen really close and then let it be a mystery at the end. Or you can say, oh, in their middle ages and then their old ages and then, they see their grandchildren or whatever it is that they wanted to do for their character. I gave them the floor, right? And I wanted them to think about that so that they could actually feel good about it. Because if they didn't think about it, they show up to the final session, they don't really know. That's going to feel, then they think back on that character a year from now, 2 years from now, 10 years from now, they're not going to have that as much of closure as if they really thought about it and came to the table prepared. And they all did, and they did a great job with that. How it all went is we started the session off. I still had my Dungeon Master screen set up. I still had everything going, and I gave the recap of the final battle, and then Q falling and dying. Who he had no idea this character was going to die. I did a whole bunch of TikToks about this character death situation, but he did not know he was going to die. And it was really I knew the character, I knew the player and the character, and it just really made sense for that to be the thing. It was this really awesome thing where Q just ascended into a higher form of existence of this omniscience where he can sense and feel the dreams of others and inspire others through this moment of inspiration and protection. So I thought it was a really beautiful ending for Q, and the player of Q loved it as well, and he even ran with it and took it to another level. So it was super awesome. But then, everyone at the table thought that player was dead. Well, sorry, player. thought that the character was dead. He still was at the table. I made jokes about like, sorry, Glenn, you don't really have to even come. I mean, I know we have snacks and stuff because everybody made food and snacks, and we had a whole little chill sesh. So I made multiple jokes about that, almost to lower the player's guard to truly think that he was actually dead. So we pick up, and the artificer tried to revive him. She tried to do something. She's like, "Can I tinker with something?" Da, 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 da. And the rolls weren't that great, and I made prefaces like, "This is going to have to be like even though it was ultimately impossible because I talked to the player, and the player did not want to be revived. He wanted to just ascend into this enlightenedness. So even if she had the ability, there would have been a cool roleplay moment there probably where he like spoke to her and said, "No, I got bigger things to do now," and like had like a cool moment like that. I was prepared for that, and I had talked with the player in between sessions. I had talked one-on-one with this player about like what potential things could happen, just so that they were prepared, because since they're almost like a dungeon master at this point because they've ascended to the world, right? But anyway, so they had their moment of like they couldn't get him, and then they went to go bury him, and then it was just really a beautiful moment in that way. But I was like, I asked them, where's the first place you'll stop? Because like where they're going to travel somewhere, and at some point there's going to rest. And as soon as they finally rest and they put their heads down to rest, I was like, you guys dream. I'm going to put all of you on the spot now. And here's how I ran this. I told everybody that they're going to be on the spot, but I told them what the task that they were going to have to come up with was very quickly. Like, I'm going to ask you guys what you guys dream of. And I'm going to go around the table and put you all on the spot. What do you guys dream of? What would your character dream of in this moment? I want you to think about that. So that's literally kind of how I said it. And then I talked and went on and elaborated but I got the overall point across so they can be simmering in there so that I'm not like putting them on the spot. Okay, what do you think? And they've had like 3 seconds to think about it. So I went around and I started just extremely like all of this built up dream energy and nightmares and dreams and all this stuff. Now that it's clashed and now that it's gone, you get like this like backup flood of dreams. Like you've never slept this good. You've never dreamed this hard. It's never felt so real. You've never been so in control of your dreams. It is literally the biggest dream you could dream. What would that dream be? Who wants to go first? And then one of the players chimed in. And now, once one player goes, it's going to be much easier for players 2, 3, 4, 5 to go because they have even more think time, right? So Odin starts talking about this really cool stuff about how his what he wants to do and what he thinks of, and he thinks about his mom, and he thinks about moments with Clara and all these different other things. It was a really beautiful thing, and he thought about Q. And so as soon as he said he thought about Q, what I had talked with the player of Q about is he's going to be able to interject himself into each one of these dreams. So there's 5 players, Q being one of the dead character. The 4 of them went around and said what they dream about, and then after they were all done, I skipped the player of Q, of course. And then I was like, we gave each moment a really cool moment. They did great with it. It was honestly like one of my favorite moments of what their characters dream about. It was so cool. And then I looked over to Q's character and I was like, what do you think? Or no, I didn't say what do you think. I looked over to him and I said, and I just kind of gestured to him and I just pointed. And he goes, so Odin, whenever you're dreaming, there's a moment where, and everyone's like, wait, what? It was really cool to see that, like, wait, what's happening here? And there's like, basically, I told Glenn, the player of Q, the human person, I told him, I was like, in this moment, you're a dungeon master. In this moment, whatever you say, it's gonna happen. Like you see, like you are puppeting their dreams. You are completely in control of that space. You just say what you do. And it was really cool. He just had his moment at the table where he went around and said what each of their dreams happened. He like visited them in each of their dreams because it showed that he was still there with them. And I just got chills. It was so cool. And then we did the big, they gave a burial to Q in the home of his, where his grandmother was, Corey. They took him there, buried him there. The crystal that was inside of his chest, they shattered it and each had a piece of it, and they each did something else cool and different with it. One made a necklace, one made a shrine, one made, and that one left it with Q. I thought that was cool. And then they traveled back to the Wanderers campsite where the last place that they left all their loved ones and basically the quest hub where they'd been operating out of the whole last part of the campaign. They left that to go do this. They went and did the Q burial and they came back, and it was a really cool like wrap up of like all the different stuff they did. It was a celebration of like all the stuff that went down, and that was like the cinematic ending moment of the end of the campaign. And then we went into an epilogue of sorts, which is right here. So this was the end. Like after the combat was done, this is what I went into and said, like, Q, you begin to feel weak, slowly lose your powers, energy whispering your chest into the sky, you feel yourself being pulled, all this kind of stuff, right? That was the end of the last session. And then campaign wrap up. Here's what I said for this as well. I have this section right here was a pre-made surface level generalized stuff just to get the ball rolling on this epilogue, because again, I want to give my players think time. I don't want to just shove it right down their throats and be like, all right, what do you do? And then they're, right? It's called think time. So in fact, I'm literally making a note of this right now. I'm going to make a video, think time video. I'm going to make a video on the main channel about think time anyway, because it's a teaching term and I use it in dungeon mastering all the time and it helps. So what I did here was I said, this is now timeless. This is now, what are you kind of doing? And like all of you guys can interject and kind of go off each other. You don't have to, whatever you say, you can come again whenever somebody else says what they're doing, and like, oh, and then I could also, and it's kind of a fluid thing right now. I'll start it off, but then I do have something to end on, and I'm going to let you guys do your thing, and then I will have the final ending monologue of what kind of goes down, and then that will be the end of the campaign. So that's kind of how I pitched it. I pitched it as, I'm going to start things off, and then I'm going to pass the floor over to you guys. What happens, right? Very fluid, dynamic situation, and then I'll give the wrap up and we'll go from there. So this little wrap up, I talked about Clara and what she has going on, some cool little side things, the little side things that nobody really remembers going on. There's like this person they talked to, a group of people that Q gave money to, a funny relationship that was in the works from some NPCs that they've tried to get into a relationship. And I just had all this going on, and then I was like, okay. And then I opened the floor to them after all of this was said. And then they went and did their thing, and they went into all this cool stuff about what they want to do. Odin wanted to become king of the Cold Nation, which was funny because I had that in my notes already. Odin, king of the Cold Nation. And I was like, wow, actually, I have that down in my notes already. So we're synced up, dude. He's like, hell yeah. Because he was trying to be humble with it. And he was like, oh, I think I want to just try and really bring the Cold Nation back together. And I said, you know what? And I spun my iPad around, and I was like, look, can you read that for me? And so there you go. And Odin's king of the Cold Nation now. Boom. And then it was cool to see where each of their characters went and what they wanted to do with each of them, and then how they started to kind of connect to what I had saw in there, and I was making little notes to kind of make sure to adjust some of the things I had in the big final picture based on what they said, so that I'm still staying true to their vision of their character in the big picture. And then they all kind of went off into the sunset. Clara had her family come back together. Her mother and father reunited. Her sister became an artificer, and she worked with the Tech Nation army. And it was really cool to see this Tech Nation of a bunch of artificers that just kind of are a mess. She came in there and just like took them to the next level, and the Tech Nation's army was known to be the best army in the entire in the land, right? And then Q has ascended into everything, and he already had that whole moment with Q. Odin became the king of the Cold Nation and opened up a bunch of orphanages because he was an orphan from the beginning of his backstory. Darius, who's now named Horus, he remembered his true name and renamed himself to his true name, which was a really cool moment as well. He opened up like an accord between all of the nations coming together, and that he was the kind of the mediator between all of that in a really, really cool way. And then his best friend Ramses became the king of the Desert Nation, who was supposed to be, he was heir to the throne anyway. So he was involved with that. And then Ivar was a part of the helped out with the Mountain Nation, and he became an immortal. That was one thing that came up there that I had that he almost kind of even forgot about. He was able to go and in a similar type way go between the nations, spread the word, and keep people to remember what happened. And it was beautiful whenever he beautiful whenever he said that, because one of the things about this whole thing of fear and coming together and not betraying each other is there's a cycle, and this whole cycle kept repeating itself because all this great evil would rise up. People would come together when all this evil happens, and then after all this evil is so bad, everyone comes together because things are so bad. There's a lot of similarities to the real world with this right now, of things getting bad and us having to kind of like put aside petty differences of things that we could really like all these big traumatic events back at 9/11, back in these different times were big in Britain right now, or Europe or whatever. The queen passed away, and that was a big moment for them to come together and just, like, be together in that mode. You'd be unified, right? So in the same type way, things got real bad and the world unified to rise up together and beat this thing. But then once everything's great again, bad stuff happens again. People start fighting each other again, and it all repeats, right? So the whole theme of this campaign was remembering how, in the good times, remembering how bad things could be, and having that symbolism of memory, having the stories of remembering where we came from, so it doesn't happen again and again and again, repeat this vicious cycle. Part of that was there were 10 nations, and in my monologue here at the end, once it passed it back to me, I went through each nation. The Hilltop Nation reclaims and rebuilds their home. The Grasslands Nation gave up part of their territory to the surrounding places so other nations could have more land. The Coastal Nation mends their fences. Mountain Nation opens their doors. Odin's the king of the Cold Nation. Corey, the grandmother from the whole time, who's actually was the witch queen of the Swamplands, she took back her throne in the Swamplands. Claude took his place as Archdruid of the Forest Nation. So all these NPCs that were key throughout the whole thing are coming and taking seats of power in all these different nations. Tech Nations is huge because of Clara helping them out. Desert Nations now led by Darius's friend. But then there's the Island Nation, and this was the final thing that I put here. If you want to pause the video and read it, you can. But I just read this whole thing off of there used to be 10 nations. Every cycle always had 10 nations, and they knew that from the history of the lore that they had discovered throughout this campaign. I said, but this time there will only be 9 because the Island Nation fell. And instead of rebuilding the Island Nation and appointing a new leader of the Island Nation and having the 10, no. There's only 9, because you have to remember in that 10th missing spot. Whenever you count, like things ending in 10s, like at the whole round, that feels good. But no. This is a memory and a reminder of what could be and the fall of all of those nations, and that could happen again if we come against each other. And that's the theme, and that's the overall emotional toll that I want these campaigns to weigh on with my players, and that for them to remember, even if it's just maybe I'm sappy or emotional with it. I don't know. Maybe it's too much. I don't know. But it means a lot to me. This moral of the story, you could say. So this was in Memorial. Whoa, what just happened? In a memorial built in this way, I had a statue made with 5 adventurers, and I described it vaguely, each of the 5 adventurers, to the point where they know who I'm describing. And the final one floating in the air was Q, almost like their guardian angel. And these 5 adventurers who came together to give it all for bringing everyone together, and them coming together is what made this possible, just like all of the nations can come together to achieve more than they could alone. Boom. So, and that was a really cool ending. And then one of my players, the player of Darius / Horus, he chimed in, is like, can I add something? I was like, oh, I love it. Yes, go for it. Yes. He said, I want to, because his character is part of the, he said before I said anything, he wanted to be a mediator between the nations, and he wanted to kind of use his flying and use his different stuff he can do to kind of like keep an open lines of communication and keep the peace going and all that kind of stuff, right? He said, I want to draft up a Wondrous Accord. And I just got chills again. Can you see the chills? Can the camera get the chills? I don't know. Can they get my tan line? Maybe. But he said, I want to draft up another Wondrous Accord. And if you guys remember from session 1, I told all of the players in session 0, there was a Wondrous Accord of all the nations coming together. And I said all the nations because back when I started the campaign, I told them there was only 5 nations. They didn't know there was 10 because timeline. Anyway, but this player wanted to draft up a Wondrous Accord between the 9 nations, and each person come together and sign it in the same exact way. But that ninth spot was blank, and he signed Never Forget. And it was a beautiful declaration of all this whole way to symbolize the memory. And that was the ending note of the campaign in a super awesome, super poetic, feels good way that I love the way this campaign ended. It was a very unique campaign that I built around their backstories. And this was the story that was told. How on earth did that happen? I don't know. You can watch the character backstory and the world backstory videos, which are like some of the first videos on this little Rift of Nations story that I've told, and how I took all their backstories, brought it together to have this plot happen, and then to see where it went was absolutely crazy and was absolutely a trip. So it was super, super cool to see this end. I appreciate anyone who's gone along with these and watched them. It's been really cool just to be able to have this log to be able to refer back to. My players can now watch this. Hey guys, they've been banned from watching this entire channel for this whole time, but there is going to be more coming. I am going to now, and I'll announce it now. I'm going to be running Curse of Strahd for the next campaign. I'm going to run a Curse of Strahd, and I'm going to put my spin on it. Of course, I'm going to do videos of me prepping it. I'm going to try and do some videos of actually us playing, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to have need some stuff to get happen. I have different Patreon goals to unlock things because it's going to take some more cameras, it's going to take some more editing, it's going to take some more stuff to be able to get that going. And I want to do that so y'all can get in from the floor there. But I am going to be starting here. A kid just born. Things are a little crazy right now. But once things settle down, I'm gonna start prepping Curse of Strahd. I'll be documenting that, and y'all can join in my journey of prepping Curse of Strahd, and seeing how that whole thing goes. And then I'll be running it, and that'll be fun. And we'll see where it goes from there. So I thank you for joining me on this journey. I hope it's been fun. I'm sorry you can't see it, but I'm working on that. So stay creative. I think I said the box. Peace. What the?